As far as Nikita and the fight, the truth is, like, he's a very exciting fighter to watch, right? That's number one. It has to be said, right? And it's
Yeah.
always a plus, right?
Yeah.
But that also comes with, that means that sometimes he's going to get hit. He's going to, go through adversity in the ring, and while he's passing adversity, is the plan still the same, or are you thinking maybe we've got to slow down a little bit until Nikita maybe fixes some, defensive deficiencies or anything like that?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. We took some time to see where Nikita would lead us as a pro fighter. We always knew that he had power, and we always knew that he was dynamic, and we always knew from day one that he loves a fight. But to be honest, as a professional, that's great, but you also have to hone the areas that you're not as strong in, and we've started that process. And you would have seen on the last fight the fruits of the American camp with the high level of sparring in Las Vegas, and the big emphasis on head movement, body movement, in and out, and trying to avoid getting hit in that process. Now, you would have seen the first 5 or 6 rounds. Nikita was just on fire in regards to that. It was a totally different Nikita. I was really pleased to see that, and I know Coach Igor was as well. But as the rounds go on and you get a little bit more tired and you start to exchange in the pocket, and you've got a great competitor opposite you, Cohen Mazudia, there was a retreat back to a bit of a slugfest, and we're well aware of that. And so next camp for Nikita will be an improved defensive effort for the latter rounds, when you are a little tired and your gas tank's starting to drain a little bit. But one thing that never leaves Nikita is a rabid spirit to, regardless of what comes and what gets him, he's coming back. And he got tested with Cohen. It was a great fight. He got tested in those later rounds, and but every time he did get tested, his resolve and his answer to that is to come back and punish for being tested. And that's what you guys are talking about. That's that excitement factor that we don't necessarily want him to be the guy that accepts that it's okay to get hit that often. And now our plan is to now work super hard on defensive mechanisms to make sure that he doesn't get hit that hard and that often going forward.
Yeah, it's like a catch-22, because as a fan, right, people love it because he's giving them great fights, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So it's kind of like, hey, this is a great fight. A lot of people aren't complaining. However, there's also this is the sport of boxing, and a lot of diehard boxing fans analyze the sport from a technical aspect. Right.
Yeah.
And that is one of the, if you want to call it a criticism that people have at the moment. I don't necessarily get too bent out of shape about it, but a lot of people just feel like, okay, at this point, after 10 fights, I think some may have felt more that Tim was more advanced than Nikita was after 10 fights. Would that be fair to say?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. Yeah, I think if you look back at Tim's 10th fight, whilst they're completely different, you can't draw a line as to similar styles. They certainly aren't. But in terms of Tim's 10th fight, we were still working on maturity for Tim, and him having an understanding of the levels that he was moving up to. And he had some great fights. And but I think Nikita at 10 fights is in with much stiffer competition than Tim was at 10. And that brings out a different Nikita. But I'll defer to what you said. I agree with what you say. I think that going forward from 10 fights, and we talked about this before, I've always used the number 12 as when I think Nikita, when most of these boys can reach a point where they're no longer at that rookie stage where they find their own way through. But from a coaching perspective, I know Igor is very big on now. Nikita's attack is good, his power is good, his technical ability is good, he's very exciting, but we really need to take a hold of his defensive program and make it better for him. Otherwise, he's going to take on too much damage, and none of us want that. Now, in terms of entertainment, does that change Nikita? Well, I don't know. Nikita, with great defence, will still be that exciting fighter that pulls off some amazing things. I just don't think we'll see the damage on him after each fight at the press conference. So my perfect world would be that we get Nikita's defence up to a point where he's fighting at the highest level and not taking on so much damage, but still having great fights and exciting fights.
One thing that I was interested in, you have the Charlo brothers, right? And they're similar size, but one campaigned at 154 which would be super welterweight, and then one campaigned at middleweight at 160. Yep. I guess to stay out of each other's way, sort of. Nikita is also campaigning at, we call it 154. You can call it super welterweight. Is the plan to stay there, or there is just a huge, I'm sure you know, middleweight is just a terrible division. And I think it's going to become even more terrible as Janibek moves up. Two belts are going to become vacant. And there are things happening there. Is it possible to see him move up to middleweight in the future?
Anything's possible. Right now, we're very comfortable at 154 for Nikita. And as you know, 154 is becoming red hot. And Tim's right in the thick of that. And October 19, which we'll talk about soon, gets Tim an opportunity to go back to the top of the 154s. But for now, I think Nikita is comfortable. He made weight very, very comfortably last week. And there's still opportunities for him at that 154. So Nikita has the frame and the body to easily go to middle, and so does Tim. But it's not something as a team that we're talking about right now. If something outstanding was to arise that gave us a sense of excitement and purpose to go to 160, we would look at it as we do with every option. But right now, I think both boys will stay at 154 at different levels, of course, for now. But ultimately, I think the boys will move up because they're getting bigger and heavier over time. So, and like everything, they're always looking for a challenge. And when you fight as often as the Tszyu boys do, it doesn't take long to run out of opportunities. But right now, 154 has too many to think about.
I want to ask you about, he's not your fighter, but he's been talking a lot about your fighters, is Michael Zerafa. He was on the card, and I know I saw the promoter No Limit, Rose say, let's do it as far as the fight. Is that the plan? Is Nikita Zerafa, even if it's not next, but is it somewhere in the near future?
Look, it's there as an interesting option should we want to take it. There's a lot of history there. The Australian public, it would be one of those fights that would sell out a stadium of 20,000 over here. It'd be big on pay-per-view because there is a long history of Michael Zerafa, Tszyu, and that ship's sailed. That's just never going to happen. Oh, yeah. But Nikita is. Nikita isn't. It's possible. I mean, I don't discount anything, but I look at every option and every offer and what's the best movement for Nikita going forward, and that will get my consideration when the time's right. No limits. Of course, they're promoters. They want a full stadium. They want a big pay-per-view audience, and it makes sense for them. And in some respects, it sort of makes sense for us too, because we're certainly not worried about the opponent, Michael Zerafa. We're more interested in the fact that it's another chance for Nikita on a big stage and a great commercial opportunity for him to earn a good dollar. Michael will offer us a great fight, but there are other offers in the mix for Nikita as well. And it just depends now on where we go when we go forward with Nikita. He's just won the IBF regional belt, so he's in the top rankings now, top 15. And so we now look at that as a turning point for Nikita to start looking forward to more regional titles and ultimately heading overseas to start on the international scene. So maybe we do one more big monster show in Australia with Zerafa, and we have some fun and enjoy it and get a good commercial outcome, and move on then to the bigger and better things overseas.
So as far as, because I've seen some of his interviews, Michael, and he's like strongly insinuating that his contract or whatever it is, he says, is the fight he just had, and then the Tzyu brothers, right? That's what he's kind of insinuating.
No, that's nonsense. The No Limits contract is basically my understanding is I think it might be a 3-fight deal, but there's no fighters attached to it. There's no names attached to it. You can't have a name attached to a contract unless two parties agree. And there's been no discussion with me in relation to terms for Zerafa or Tim. So I felt Nikita or Tim to fight Michael. There's been chats between myself and Matt Rose from No Limits about Nikita and Zerafa, and we both agree that it's potentially a fight, but that's as far as it's gone. So if someone tells you that these fight deals are done and contracted, you know that that's nonsense. It doesn't work that way anyway. How could it be contracted to fight Tim Tszyu when he's fighting for world titles in the United States? So that doesn't make any sense.
Right. So, well, Zerafa's going to do what he has to do, right, to get his name out there. So it is what it is.
Yeah,
but
100%. He's the bad boy of Australian boxing, and I spoke to him. Like, I speak to Michael and his team, and I spoke to him at the open session of the Nikita fight, and I just said, mate, do what you do. Be the bad boy. If that guarantees you some fights and you get a payday, I said, in every sport, it's tribal. There has to be a good guy and a bad guy, and at the moment, you're capturing some noise with the bad guy. Keep it up. It doesn't affect us. We're not worried one way or another. We don't comment. We don't get involved. I mean, they asked Nikita, and Nikita said, yeah, look, whatever. The general answer from my guys is that, whatever management and promoters come up with, we'll be happy to turn up. So I get what Michael's doing, and you can't blame the guy if that's how he wants to do his business. Good luck to him. I don't really have I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the nonsense that he says, but I can't control social media. The day you try and do that, you might as well just throw your phone in the river.
I will say, before